Welcome to Countdown to Classic, a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. But before we get to that, I just want to let you know that you can find all things Countdown to Classic online at countdowntoclassic.com. And please add us on social media, everyone, at Instagram and Facebook at Countdown to Classic. You can also find us on Twitter on the handle Count2Classic. That's with the number 2. I absolutely want to hear your feedback, guys, or your input on the show. So please do feel free to drop me a line anytime on all socials or email feedback at countdowntoclassic.com. Now, guys, this is the very first Wednesday episode that I'll be dropping on you, even though I'm releasing it a little bit early, just this first week, just so I give you guys a little bit more content to go through. But regularly, guys, what's going to be happening is Sundays and Wednesdays are the release dates. Sundays, as you've heard on our first episode, are news-based. They go through what's in the news with WoW Classic and mainly what are people on the forums talking about, and we dissect that on a weekly basis. However, this particular episode, the second episode of the week, or the Wednesday episode, is more lore-based. Now, this is a content thing, guys. We're going to be covering off on vanilla content, and what I do is I take one location, one character, something like that from vanilla that we all came to know and love, and I really, really grind down on the lore of that particular thing. And then once we're done discussing the lore, I start to discuss what the community's reaction was to this content back in the day, and also what our expectations are of this content with the WoW Classic release coming up. So perhaps what the forums are saying, what people might want, and again, changes versus no changes. And obviously some of this stuff really perhaps should fall in the no changes category, guys. But I'm just, as I do here, again, I'm not the go-to authority on WoW, and this is not my soapbox. I weigh up both sides of the argument. I present you guys with everything, all the little bits of information that I can for you to decide. This is a forum essentially for you, the players, to get two sides of an argument, and you go away and you think about what you like about the either side of the argument, or you discuss it with your friends. Hey, this is what Countdown to Classic think. What do you think? Should they do this? Should they do that? This is just food for thought, guys. Everything just getting the ball rolling with the upcoming release of WoW Classic. Anyway, I am your host, guys. My name is Josh Corbett, and I am a podcast vet. As I said in the first episode, I'm actually one of the co-hosts of the Cinephiles comedy movie podcast. Please do check us out at cinephiles.com. That's SINNERFILES. If you are at all interested in movies, guys, it's a really good podcast that I do. It's legitimately funny. I promise. I swear to God, go and check it out. The two guys I do it with are hilarious, and it's a lot of fun. But that's not what we're here for now. We're here for World of Warcraft. Now, not only World of Warcraft, but lore of World of Warcraft. Now, what have I chosen for this first episode, guys? I have chosen Naxxramas. We're going right back to Naxx. Now, I'm doing things sort of arse end first, guys, for this first episode of the lore breakdown, going straight to the end game content. And not only the end game content, pretty much the last bit of content. This was the final dungeon, the final showdown that you could get in vanilla WoW. And I thought that it was just so deep in the lore of this place and also of its inhabitants that I wanted to go back and just take a little bit of a walk down memory lane and remind everyone what happened at Naxx and why people were there and why it was a thing. And look, guys, I enjoy the lore. I know there are people who are much, much bigger on the lore out there online. I've read and seen all their stuff, and I love it. But I just wanted to touch in with, you might be asking, well, why should I listen to your lore breakdown when there's a million other things out there online? Here's what I'm going to be doing, guys. Not only am I going to give you sort of a cold documentary style reading back of the lore, I'm also going to be chipping in with a bit of fun commentary. So that's what I hope will differentiate my lore breakdowns from other ones, is that we're going to have a bit of fun with it, guys, and just sort of reflect, have a joke, and think about why we're doing the things that we do in WoW. Now, I should preface this with, On these lore episodes, guys, I'm pretty much just going to be spitting out things, information that you can find on WoW Wiki. So please don't write to me and say, like, all you're doing is literally just reading out stuff from WoW Wiki. I know, I'm telling you that. I'm just coming back to you with stuff that's available on open source websites and things that anyone can edit. And look, some things might be wrong. This might be user error. If you hear any factual mistakes, by all means, let me know. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to clear things up in the future. But I just basically want to have a bit of fun with these guys and revisit this stuff that we are going to be going back and visiting again ourselves very soon when WoW Classic comes out. Well, not very soon, maybe a couple of years away. Who knows? Either way. Here we go, guys. We're going to do this by way of a few segments. Now, these segments on this particular episode are going to be a scoop of vanilla. That's what we said. Anger management, tidbits, and top 5. We have a bit of fun with this, guys. So just bear with me through all the segments. I hope you have as much fun as we do. And here we go. Back to Naxxramas with a scoop of vanilla. Naxxramas was a 40-man raid instance floating above the eastern Plaguelands. It was a massive necropolis and had the unquestionable honor of serving as the seat of one of the Lich King's most powerful officers, the dreaded Lich Kel'Thuzad. The instance was regarded as the most difficult before the release of Burning Crusade and should not have been attempted at level 60 without at least 40 well-equipped, preferably tier 2 or tier 2.5 armor players. Naxxramas was also the home of many of the most powerful items of the pre-Burning Crusade era, and 60-plus quests with rewards such as Atiesh, Great Staff of the Guardian. Oh, God, didn't everyone want that back in the day? I remember even as a spellcaster, you'd look at that and go like, oh, I want one. And people are like, you can't have it. And I was like, yeah, but I still kind of want it. But anyway, all tier 3 items available in the game were in Naxx. The dungeon was added in patch 1.11, making it the last non-expansion instance added to the core game, as well as the last 40-man instance. Now, what was the lore of Naxx? Well, here we go, guys. Now, in exploring the lore of Naxxramas, we first and foremost really have to break down the history of one particular character. That character being Kel'Thuzad, someone who is very, very core to the lore of Vanilla WoW. Before the events of Warcraft 2, Kel'Thuzad was a member of the Council of Six, the High Council of the Kirin Tor, the Masters of Dalaran, a majorcratic city-state located by the Lordimir Lake on the Alterac Mountains shore in the Eastern Kingdoms. When Jaina Proudmoore, talented sorceress and Lady of Theramore Isle, and Saucy Minx, I should add, was in her 3rd year of apprenticeship, Antonidas, head of the Kirin Tor, introduced her to Kel'Thuzad, who at the time was said to be one of the finest mages in the Kirin Tor. He was like Rookie of the Year, guys. He was coming up. He was awesome. It was great. And he was a part of the Dalaran Society, and everyone was happy. However, at some stage, a handful of powerful individuals scattered across the world heard a call, a mental summonings from Northrend. This call was coming from the Lich King. The Lich King was master and lord of the Evil Scourge, an evil undead faction vying for control of the world, which he ruled telepathically from the Frozen Throne atop Ice Crown Glacier. Kel'Thuzad was the most notable and the first person to answer the Lich King's call. I love that he got in there first. It's first come, first served. Like, I'm here. Imagine if someone else got there first. We'd have some very different lore, wouldn't we? But long considering him above the scriptures of his peers, Kel'Thuzad had been considered a maverick for years due to his insistence on studying the forbidden arts of necromancy. I sort of like to think of Kel'Thuzad as the Maverick of Dalaran in terms of just like Maverick at Top Gun. He flies by the seat of his pants. He's got his own rules. Screw you. Top hard deck. Take this. Driven to learn all he could of the magical world and its shadowy wonders, he was frustrated by what he saw as his peers' outmoded and unimaginative precepts. Upon hearing the powerful summons from Northrend, the Archmage bent all of his considerable will to communing with the mysterious voice. Convinced that the Kirin Tor was too squeamish to seize the power and knowledge inherent in the dark arts, he vowed to learn what he could from the immensely powerful being named the Lich King. Eventually, so this is sort of the meet-cute era of Lich King and Kel'Thuzad, like, hey, like, I'll swipe right for you, and they just get to know each other, eventually. But Antonidas learned that Kel'Thuzad had been experimenting with necromancy by reanimating dead rats. Ew. Fearing for the safety and reputation of Dalaran, Antonidas had Kel'Thuzad's properties searched, and all items tainted by dark magic were confiscated and destroyed. Hope Antonidas had a warrant for that. But anyway. Antonidas warned Kel'Thuzad that he would be stripped of his rank and holdings and exiled from both Dalaran and Lordaeron, the northernmost subcontinent of the Eastern Kingdoms, if he did not abandon his quote-unquote madness. Leaving behind his fortune and prestigious political standing, Kel'Thuzad abandoned the ways of the Kirin Tor and left Dalaran forever. He took his toys and he went home, guys, going, fuck this and fuck you, I'm out of here. Prodded by the Lich King's persistent voice in his mind, he sold his vast holdings and stored away his fortunes. Hope he sold in a seller's market. God, what would your house get in Dalaran? That would be sweet. Travelling alone over many leagues of both land and sea, he finally reached the frozen shores of Northrend. Intent on reaching Icecrown and offering his services to the Lich King, the Archmage passed through the ravaged, war-torn ruins of Azjol-Nerub, the vast underground nation or empire of the arachnid-like Nerubians. Kel'Thuzad saw firsthand the scope and ferocity of Ner'zhul's power, Ner'zhul being the orc shaman whose spirit was transformed into the form of the Lich King. Come on, guys, keep up. He began to believe that allying himself with the mysterious Lich King would not only be wise, but potentially fruitful. And I would say he was probably betting on the right horse there, perhaps. Kel'Thuzad met with Anubarak, king of the Nerubians, who told him of all the power he could wield. Frightened by the horrors that he saw in Naxxramas, Kel'Thuzad teleported out and tried to escape. Unfortunately, he was surrounded by wraiths and was brought back inside. After long months of trekking through the harsh Arctic wastelands, Kel'Thuzad finally reached the dark glacier of Icecrown. Months of trekking through Northrend, that would suck. I'm thinking full like DiCaprio. What was he doing with bears? But anyway, more importantly, what were the bears doing to him? But go see The Revenant if you're wondering about what they do to people when they're left alone to their own devices. But I digress. He boldly approached Ner'zhul's dark citadel and was shocked when the silent undead guardsman let him pass, as though he was expected. Eerie. Kel'Thuzad descended deep into the cold earth and found his way down to the bottom of the glacier. Within the endless cavern of ice and shadows, he prostrated himself before the frozen throne and offered his soul to the Dark Lord of the Dead. Always a dangerous game to do a deal with the devil. However, the Lich King was pleased with his latest conscript. He promised Kel'Thuzad immortality and great power in exchange for his loyalty and obedience. He also offered him some sweet pogs that Kel'Thuzad was totally down for, so that sealed the deal. Kel'Thuzad, eager for dark knowledge and power, accepted his first great mission, to go into the world of men and found a new religion that would worship the Lich King as a god. To help the Archmage accomplish his mission, Ner'zhul left Kel'Thuzad's humanity intact. Oh, thanks. The aged, yet still charismatic wizard was charged with using his powers of illusion and persuasion to lull the downtrodden, disenfranchised masses of Lordaeron into his confidence. Downtrodden? We're not downtrodden. Once he had their attention, he would offer them a new vision of what society could be and a new figurehead to call their king. Kel'Thuzad returned to Lordaeron in disguise, and in the floating dread citadel Naxxramas, and over the span of 3 years he used his fortune and intellect to gather a clandestine brotherhood of like-minded men and women. The brotherhood, which he called the Cult of the Damned, cool name bro, promised its acolytes social equality and eternal life on Azeroth in exchange for their service and obedience to Ner'zhul. P.S. we get tax-exempt status. Score! As the months passed, Kel'Thuzad found many eager volunteers for his new cult amongst the tired, overburdened labourers of Lordaeron. Geez, this wiki really lays into the people of Lordaeron. Tired, overburdened, downtrodden, disenfranchised. Fucking take that, guys. Anyway. Surprisingly, Kel'Thuzad's goal to pervert the citizens' faith in the holy light towards belief in Ner'zhul's dark shadow was easily attained. These guys were very ready to turn, guys. And as the cult of the damned grew in size and influence, Kel'Thuzad made sure to keep its working secret from the authorities of Lordaeron at every turn. At Caer Darrow, a keep on the Isle of Darrow in the western Plaguelands, Kel'Thuzad made a deal with the Barov family, and some of his cultists moved into Scholomance. Scholomance became a vile academy for prospective necromancers of the Scourge, ruining the palatial house of Barov on a rise overlooking the eventually abandoned city of Caer Darrow. With Kel'Thuzad's success in Lordaeron, the Lich King made the final preparations for his assault against human civilization, placing his plague energies into a number of portable artifacts called plague cauldrons. Ner'zhul ordered Kel'Thuzad to transport the cauldrons to Lordaeron, where they would be hidden within various cult-controlled villages. The cauldrons, protected by the loyal cultists, would then act as plague generators by sending the plague seeping out across the unsuspecting farmlands and cities of northern Lordaeron. That would kill property prices. The Lich King's plan worked perfectly. Many of Lordaeron's northern villages were contaminated almost immediately. Just as in Northrend, the citizens who contracted the plague died and arose as the Lich King's willing slaves. The cultists under Kel'Thuzad were eager to die and be raised again in their Dark Lord's service. Hey, fuck off, I was next to be killed. Take me. Yeah, Kel, KT, it's my turn. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Ugh. They exulted in the prospect of immortality through undeath. God, you'd be spewing if the one guy that the immortality spell or what have you didn't work on. As the plague spread, more and more feral zombies arose in the Northlands. Kel'Thuzad looked upon the Lich King's growing army and named it the Scourge, for soon it would march upon the gates of Lordaeron and scour humanity from the face of the world. Kel'Thuzad, upon the Lich King's instruction, oversaw the infection of the small town of Brill in the Tirisfal glades of northern Lordaeron, where he was discovered by, once again, saucy minx Jaina Proudmoore, and Prince Arthas, Crown Prince of Lordaeron and Knight of the Silver Hand, son of King Terenas Menethil II, and heir to the throne, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, all that jazz. From there, he quickly fled, and they followed him back to Andorhal, where he told Arthas of the presence of Mal'Ganis at Stratholme. Mal'Ganis was a fearsome dreadlord. Dreadlords were intelligent and cunning demons who acted as intelligence agents, interrogators, and emissaries for the fiery lords of the Burning Legion. The Burning Legion being a vast, innumerable army of demons, infernals, and corrupted races who sought to destroy any trace of order in the universe. Arthas, in a rage, hunted down Kel'Thuzad and killed him, but not before Kel'Thuzad told him, "Not in the face!" No, that's not what he said. He said his death would mean little, but they were not finished yet. After Arthas had travelled to Northrend and slain Mal'Ganis with Frostmourne, the runeblade that the Lich King thrust from the frozen throne intending that Arthas would discover it, Arthas returned to Lordaeron and betrayed his kingdom and became a servant of the Lich King. Et tu, Arthas! Kel'Thuzad began to appear to Arthas as a ghostly apparition after the paladin guarding Kel'Thuzad's grave, Gavinrad the Dire, was slain by Arthas and Kel'Thuzad's remains were reclaimed. He appeared only to Arthas and told him that he was not to trust the Dreadlords. Kel'Thuzad explains to Arthas that the Dreadlords were the Lich King's jailers and promised to explain all of the Lich King's plans to Arthas once he walked the earth again. I promise, I'll totally tell you. Just bring me back from the dead. Yeah, I'll tell you later. No, I can only tell you once I'm alive again, mate. Just help me out. Anyway, in Kel'Thuzad, a lush forest region north of the Kingdom of Lordaeron and the traditional home of the High Elves, Kel'Thuzad watched over Arthas as he made the slow procession to the Sunwell, a fountain of mystical power located in the capital of Kel'Thuzad, Silvermoon City. Arthas achieved this by progressing against the stratagems of Sylvanas Windrunner. Hang on, I know that name. The Ranger General of Silvermoon City. And, again, total saucy minx. Eventually, Arthas ravaged his way through the two elf gates and finally laid siege to Silvermoon itself, breaching through to the fabled Sunwell. Arthas placed Kel'Thuzad's remains within the well, and with the help of Tichondrius, yet another Dreadlord, God, they seem to be breeding by the minute, Kel'Thuzad was reborn into the terrifying form of a leech. He had seen better days, guys. He wasn't looking great. As they travelled to Alterac, situated in the foothills and mountains of the land now known as the Alterac Mountains, Kel'Thuzad explained that the Scourge was merely the harbinger of the Burning Legion. Kel'Thuzad explained that he would summon the first of the demons, the Eredar warlock Archimonde, to the mortal world. After slaying the orcs guarding the Demon Gate, Kel'Thuzad communed with the Dark Lord, who told him that he must go to Dalaran and steal the Book of Medivh, a mysterious prophet and powerful mage who was manipulating events in order to arrange the formation of a last-ditch alliance between the mortal races on Kalimdor. Do I have to go back home? They totally know my face there. Actually, wait. Maybe they won't recognize me after all. I look like shit now. After Arthas led the attack on Dalaran and killed Antonidas, R.I.P., the book was retrieved and Kel'Thuzad began the lengthy summoning process, with Arthas defending him from the many attacks of Dalaran and the Kirin Tor. When all was complete, Archimonde stepped through the portal and was free to act according to his plans. His first act was to promote Tichondrius to leader of the Scourge, rendering Arthas and Kel'Thuzad of little use. Had totally been outsourced. However, Kel'Thuzad was confident in the Lich King's grand design and disappeared amidst the chaos of Dalaran's destruction. He told Arthas the final part of the Lich King's plan. Profit. Right? That was always the final part of the plan. Profit. Then teleported him to Kalimdor, one of the continents of Azeroth located to the west of the Eastern Kingdoms and southwest of Northrend. Come on, guys, get out your Google Maps. You know this one. Kel'Thuzad resurfaced as the Legion raked across the Plague Lands, the regions of the northern eastern kingdoms that were corrupted by the Scourge. And in the aftermath of the invasion, he remained in the capital city as one of the Lich King's lieutenants. Lieutenant Dan. Oh, wait, sorry, that was his other lieutenant. Arthas had gone to Kalimdor on Ner'zhul's command to find the rogue demon hunter Illidan. Now, that's another name we definitely know, I'm hoping. Leaving only Kel'Thuzad and saucy minx Sylvanas Windrunner, now a saucy banshee, raised from the dead by Arthas as punishment for being a pain in his royal ass after he killed her. However, both knew that the Legion was defeated long before the Dreadlords who remained in Lordaeron did. Arthas returned in a fury and chased the Dreadlords out of the capital. Go on, get! And Kel'Thuzad was relieved to see him, running in open arms. Baby, I'm so happy to see... Oh, no, okay, it wasn't quite like that, but something like that. There was a weird little thing between Arthas and Kel'Thuzad that maybe we'll get into later. With the Legion's generals gone, they turned to the human villagers who were escaping to the mountain passes. Kel'Thuzad thought that perhaps they would be a fitting sacrifice to the Lich King, and led his necromancers into battle against the paladin Magroth the Defender and his men, who were protecting the human refugees. But as they cut through the human forces, Arthas suffered some violent seizures. It's not a tumor! And Kel'Thuzad considered recalling their forces, but the king forbade it, and they continued on their macabre mission. In the aftermath, Arthas received a vision from Ner'zhul, who told him to return to Northrend. Kel'Thuzad immediately prepared for his departure, but they were abruptly ambushed by the Dreadlords and separated. The Dreadlords unleashed their forces against Arthas, but Kel'Thuzad found his way out of the city. See you later. Kel'Thuzad later came upon Arthas in the clutches of Saucy Minx Sylvanas Windrunner and her wicked banshees. After Sylvanas ambushed and betrayed Arthas, I always enjoyed this scene. I just thought Sylvanas inviting Arthas along, like, hey Arthas, why don't you come meet up with me in the banshees in the forest? And he's like, I'm fucking there. Girls, where's the party at? What are you doing? Oh, ambush, you say. However, Saucy Minx Sylvanas Windrunner was about to strike a finishing blow when Kel'Thuzad unleashed his forces against her and her saucy sisters. With the saucy banshees dead, saucy Sylvanas was forced to retreat. Kel'Thuzad escorted Arthas to the shore, where he had prepared a fleet of ships for his departure. Arthas asked Kel'Thuzad and his most loyal servant and twisted friend to remain in Lordaeron and ensure that his legacy endured. Kel'Thuzad swore on what was left of his life to carry out that mission to any cost. Bros for life, bro. While saucy Sylvanas and her Forsaken claimed the Tirisfal Glades, Kel'Thuzad returned to the Eastern Plaguelands, which he ruled from the flying necropolis Naxxramas. And now we finally get to Naxxramas, after we had to go through who Kel'Thuzad, the effective lord of Naxxramas, was. So, in the Lich King's haste to spread the plague of undeath over Azeroth, he gifted Kel'Thuzad the flying citadel of Naxxramas, a horrific base of operations for the Scourge. The Scarlet Crusade, a religious organization dedicated to the eradication of the undead, and the Argent Dawn, an organization focused on protecting Azeroth from the threats that seek to destroy it, such as the Burning Legion and the Scourge, consistently sought to weaken the defenses of the floating fortress. The citadel was made up of the following 4 wings and inhabitants. The first wing was the Arachnid Quarter or wing. You get the gist of what I'm doing here, guys. The Arachnid Quarter was a web-covered wing of spiders and cultists of the Cult of the Damned that contains 3 bosses. It was considered an entry-level quarter. This is where you first go to enjoy your little dabble into Naxxramas. Being an entry-level quarter, it's usually the first one targeted by guilds in an effort to gear up their players. The Arachnid Quarter is defended by 3 bosses. The first being Anub Rekhan, a Nerubian crypt lord and one of the finest spider lords of Azjol Nerub. He was brought under control of the Scourge when he and his commander, Anub Arak, were finally defeated by the Lich King many years ago. It is said he was the most loyal of Anub Arak's commanders. The second boss was Grand Widow Phaelina, a high-ranking cult mistress of the Cult of the Damned. I guess that makes her the Cult of the Damned's like Tom Cruise equivalent, the high-ranking cult guy. Yeah, there you go, Tom Cruise. I took a shot at you on a World of Warcraft podcast. Take that. A botanist in life, breeder and caretaker of arachnids in death, she oversees the Spider Wing, developing the most potent of poisons for the Lich King. The third boss of the Arachnid Quarter was Naxxna. Now, this is one of those many boss names or character names that I'm sure all of us have got very, very different pronunciations of, guys. I go with Naxxna. Some people might say Naxxna, or I don't know. However, you know what? It's your party. You say it how you want. Naxxna, a colossal, highly poisonous spider born deep within the mountains of Northrend many ages ago. She was captured within the dread citadel Naxxramas, where she gives birth to her brood, feeding them the corpses of all who dare venture too deeply into Naxxramas. Ooh. The next quarter, guys, was the Plague Quarter. Lovely sounding place, which I'm sure you would love to visit. It was a wing of strange fungus. Sounds like my bathroom. Ew. Ghouls, gargoyles, maggots, and other plagued monstrosities. This wing has 3 bosses as well, and is only very slightly more difficult than the Arachnid Quarter. Tell that to all the raiders that wiped out there. The first boss was Noth the Plaguebringer, a necromancer who specialized in curses and summoning. Once a notable wizard and alchemist of Dalaran, Noth heard the Lich King's call as Arthas and Kel'Thuzad did. He was quick to turn his back on the light and joined the Scourge, where he believed that real power lay. During the Third War, Noth saw that many innocent lives were needed to feed the growing might of the Scourge, and he came to a point where he started opposing himself. Kel'Thuzad, smelling a rat in the mix, resolved the matter by freezing his heart in his chest with his frost magic. Noth the Plaguebringer, now more undead than human, is an extremely powerful necromancer with a various array of deadly spells and curses. Responsible for the creation of the process that distills the souls of the living and places them within the cold cage of undeath, Noth was observed to be refining this process even now. The second boss, guys, was Hygen the Unclean, a necromancer who specialized in diseases and dancing. The mastermind behind the plague cauldrons that turned the wilderness of Azeroth into the Plague Lands. It is said that Hygen has rigged the very walls and floors of Naxxramas itself with a vast array of traps, which he can trigger at will, and also do a mean thriller dance. Lotheb, a giant fungal monster and the third boss of the Plague Quarter. The hideous result of fusing the living plague of the Plague Lands with the bog beast of Azeroth. Oh God, how could I possibly have thought of saying bog beast while keeping a straight face? We've already alluded to what may reside in my bathroom from Naxxramas. Maybe that's another one, but I won't go too far into detail. Lotheb is said to control the power of healing itself. Next was the Military Quarter, guys. And the Military Quarter was a wing of Death Knights, their students, and their steeds. This wing also has 3 bosses, funny that, and requires slightly more coordination. Again, tell that to all the guilds that wiped on this wing, than the Arachnid or Plague wings, but has no higher gear requirements, allegedly. The first boss, guys, was Instructor Razuvius. Now, this guy was the Death Knight trainer of Naxxramas, the most feared of the Death Knight trainers of the Scourge. Kel'Thuzad's appointed trainer of all Death Knights. It is said that his own technique is so potent, only a disciple of his could possibly withstand his might. Now, next we've got Gothic the Harvester. The second boss was a grand necromancer of the Lich King and the legions he commands. A master of necromancy and conjuration, Gothic is said to be able to beckon forth legions of the undead at a moment's notice. It is with his guidance that even the weakest of Death Knights can raise the dead. And finally, you all know them, you all love them, it's the 4 horsemen. 4 mounted, high-ranking Death Knight bosses fought at once. The most powerful Death Knights within Naxxramas are the 4 horsemen. They represent the pinnacle of Kel'Thuzad's guard. The first, Thane Korthaz, holds the power of flame. A fallen dwarf paladin, there is speculation that he fell to the Scourge after Uther's death, as he might have been a leading member of the Knights of the Silver Hand. The next horseman was Lady Blormo, who calls forth the power of shadows, drawing the souls of the living into the voracious embrace. Judging by her black colouring, Lady Blormo most likely represents the 3rd rider of the apocalypse, the rider of famine. It is presumed that Lady Blormo was formerly a paladin. Sir Zeliek, another member of the famed 4 horsemen, a paladin in life, so strong in his faith that even in undeath, the power of the light still heeds his call. Smiting his foes in battle, Sir Zeliek still tries to make players run, so he does not have to kill another person. Oh, that's nice. He seemingly resisted being turned into a Death Knight like the other horsemen due to his powerful faith. It seems as though Sir Zeliek, I keep thinking of celiac whenever I say that, managed to retain his sanity despite Kel'Thuzad's corruption, but still his body obeys the Lich King's lieutenant. This could be seen as a mark of great spirituality and mental strength on the part of the paladin. Based on his white color scheme and the wings on his helmet, signifying victory, Sir Zeliek is most likely based on the first rider of the apocalypse, the White Rider of Conquest. The final Death Knight and the big bad of the crew, Lord Mograine, was the finest warrior that the Death Knights had ever seen, also known as the Ashbringer. He was one of the leaders of the Silver Hand and the original wielder of the Ashbringer, a powerful and legendary sword known for its use against the undead. He was murdered by his son Renaud, not the car company, the guy, with the sword, and raised as a Death Knight by Kel'Thuzad. The next quarter, guys, was the Abomination Quarter, a wing of toxic slime filled with abominations and their creators. This quarter contains 4 bosses, unlike the others that all had 3, and requires slightly higher gear, apparently, and coordination than the first 3 wings. The first boss, Patchwork. What a guy. A Titanic standard abomination. Patchwork is a Titanic abomination found in Naxxramas and is known as Kel'Thuzad's Avatar of War. The second boss was Grobulus, a slime-based abomination. The first of what was to be an army of flesh giants. It carried the plague slime of Naxxramas within its body, injecting the living ooze into the bodies of its foes. That sounds very intimate. The recipient of this foul injection would usually flee to his allies, bringing them down with him. Tinder date's gone wrong. Gluth, an abomination dog created from animal parts. Gluth, the foul plague dog of Naxxramas, was said to have an appetite so voracious that even the living were not enough to satisfy his hunger. Fugan was said to feed him an army of zombies daily, recycling the remains of undead too weak to use in combat. And finally, Thaddeus, a massive abomination with electricity-based powers. Thaddeus, built from the flesh of women and children. It is said that because, they're always the ones that go first, and apparently they go first to Thaddeus. It is said that their souls are fused together, eternally bound within that foul prison of flesh. Next, guys, we had the Frost Worm Lair. And now you're getting to the final pieces of Naxxramas. The Frozen Heart of Naxxramas, which contains the 2 bosses, Sapphiron and Kel'Thuzad, and can be accessed by teleportation orbs. Pre-patch 3.3.0, you had to clear each of the 4 final bosses in the 4 wings to get here, guys. Firstly, we've got Sapphiron, Kel'Thuzad's gigantic frostworm guardian. Sapphiron was an agent of the Blue Dragonflight who had guarded a treasure hoard in the mountains of Northrend. After being slain by Arthas Menethil, the dragon was raised as a powerful frostworm and sent to the halls of Naxxramas, where he guards the inner sanctum of the Citadel's Dreadmaster, Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad! Here we are, the big bad, guys. Master of Naxxramas, and you know what? I think we've covered it. We know who Kel'Thuzad is by now. But obviously, eventually, guys, the Scarlet Crusade and the Argent Dawn facilitated an incursion that eventually led to Kel'Thuzad's defeat. And we know a thing or two about that because some of us, perhaps more than what people think, were there and we saw that. Not me. Fucked if I ever got to Naxxramas. I wasn't that good. But some people did, and they took him down eventually, and that's all nice. Kel'Thuzad was the last encounter of the dungeon Naxxramas, implemented in the patch 1.11, as we just said. He was effectively viewed as the end-game boss of the original game of World of Warcraft. He was ultimately defeated by the players, that's us, but does not die. What a dick. As a leech, he may reform using a magic item known as a phylactery. Had Kel'Thuzad's phylactery been destroyed along with him, Kel'Thuzad would have been defeated forever, but some things do not happen as they should. Fuck, we really dropped the ball on that one, didn't we, guys? Well, there's always next time on WoW Classic. The quest, The Fall of Kel'Thuzad, describes how the player, who likely wanted to destroy the phylactery, is manipulated by some mental force to give the phylactery to Father Inigo Montoy in Light's Hope Chapel. Something very unusual was going on there, and the Argent Dawn reported that the phylactery did not reach their hands. A traitor amongst the ranks of the Knightly Order of the Argent Dawn absconded with Kel'Thuzad's cursed remains and fled to Northrend, where the fallen leech could be reanimated. And that's the lore of Kel'Thuzad and Naxxramas, guys, which moves us on to our next segment. That's what we said. This segment's purpose is to talk about some of the points that people are hitting on in the forums in relation to how Naxx is going to be in the new iteration of World of Warcraft Classic. A lot of people are excited about Naxx, guys. As I said, it's kind of like the final level. It's the final boss. It's where you're trying to get the best of the best gear. So people obviously do talk about it quite a bit. Now, what are people saying on the forums in relation to how we're going to get Naxx? And what kind of points are we hitting on? I'll just direct you to a post by user Bozakluzi, who says, well, just to start with, less than 1% of the player population saw Naxx, yet every single poster on these forums rated Naxx in Classic. Come on, guys, really? I just wanted to start with that, just because it's a bit of a running gag on the forums that people sort of say that there's a lot of people out there who seem to know what goes on in Naxx and talk about what happened in there, when we all know very, very few people got there. Now, I'm not here to throw shade at people that talk about Naxx, but yes, it is somewhat of a commonly accepted thing that somewhere perhaps between 1 to 5 to 6 to 7% of people actually went in and did the stuff there. Again, I wasn't one of them, so I'm not putting myself in that elite status. I wish I could have gotten there. I hope to get there in the next iteration. But yeah, it's a bit of a thing. How it's funny how everyone seems to chime in on Naxx when a lot of us don't really know what happened there. Either way, the next point is the timing of Naxx's release in World of Warcraft Classic. User Evil Muffin says, yes, they should put Naxx in eventually, that being released on a schedule similar to how the original timeline for Classic was in regards to patches, and they should keep it at the difficulty level that it was. We'll touch on the difficulty later, but just in terms of timing of release, it's an interesting point, guys, because when do you want Naxx to be available to us, the players of World of Warcraft Classic? Is it something that you want later or straight from the outset? Now, the overwhelming majority of people, in my mind, as I said, I do scour the forums a lot, guys, hence why I do this podcast. It's kind of reporting back what the forums are saying to you who might not have the time to check them or who don't have the fortitude to put up with the bullshit that's said there. But the majority of people do seem to want Naxx to come later, as though it is a drip-by-drip release of content, just as they did with the original World of Warcraft. However, someone please email me and tell me if I'm crazy for saying this, but what's the damage of just having it there from the start? I don't really understand if it's just there from the implementation of WoW Classic, how it hurts anyone. I do understand maybe you do want to create a bit of a content progression in terms of let everyone get to 60, let them do all their attunements, and then they can sit at the peak of their attunements for a while before they get to Naxx, and then release Naxx a few months later. Then they can be like, wow, new content, we're going to go storm Naxx. But I just don't really see the difference in just having it there from the start. And obviously, depending on what Blizzard's going to do with World of Warcraft Classic, whether they're constantly updating it or if they just literally give us one big bulk final version of the game and they walk away forever and go, there's your game, we're never touching it again, assholes. You asked for it, you got it, have fun, leave us alone. Which, I mean, could happen. I doubt it's going to happen. It'd be fun if it happened that way. But when are we going to get it, guys? You let me know when you think we're going to get it. Look, we are probably likely going to get it sometime after via a patch, but I'm down with just having it there from the outset. Anyway, moving on to Naxx tuning. User Locatar says, if we are going to change things, let's... Oh, God, I know I just said the word and a lot of you just went, what? Change? No changes! No changes! I know. Just this is not me saying this. This is someone else. So just bear with me because we're going to get to these points. If we are going to change things, again, this is not me saying this. This is this guy. Or girl. If we're going to change things, let's make Naxx damn near impossible to beat. Well, it was almost that originally, so let's take it a step further and make it such a challenge that once again, only the top raiders even come close to reaching Kel'Thuzad. That should keep it from being on farm for at least 4 years, maybe longer. This raid should not be an amusement park ride. I don't think it was, but anyway. If you are not prepared... This raid should not be an amusement park ride. If you are not prepared with the best of the best, you shouldn't get past the trash. It's an interesting post, guys, and there's a few very high eyebrow-raising points that he brings up. First and foremost, if we're going to change things, like, oh, God, don't start talking about changing content of raids and dungeons. Like, that's a bit worrisome. Some people are advocating for it, and I do understand where you're coming from, guys. Personally, I'm against changing the content of raids and dungeons, but perhaps he's not so much saying change the content, but I think he's more talking about changing the difficulty, and obviously he goes on about it, saying, like, let's make it damn near impossible. I think that's a bit ridiculous, and this person was hammered a little bit on the forum, saying, well, why are we making impossible content? What's the point? Like, we're not sure. You can have difficult video games. You know, World of Warcraft had its very difficult moments. Things like Dark Souls have their very difficult moments. But we're not in the business of making things so impossible that we want to have you thrust your keyboard through the screen. Like, it's nice to have frustrating things and challenges that you want to overcome, but we're not here to be impossible. That's a bit ridiculous. We don't want content that literally only with good luck 0.5% of the population can beat. I don't think that's Blizzard's game, really. Even though they did make Naxx originally obviously very, very difficult, people still did take it down with time and effort. And given what we know now, with all the utilities at our disposal, obviously I anticipate that we'll see far more people taking down Naxx with all the strategies that are on YouTube and things like that. But I do agree that absolutely Naxx should not be an amusement park ride. You're exactly right there. However, I don't think it needs to be impossible. Do we need to change the difficulty in Naxx? This has been a really, really hot talking point. People say that it's going to be too easy with all the information we have out there. I don't necessarily agree with that, guys, just because, like I said, you guys who have been through Naxx and who almost sort of took it down or did take it down, I understand what you're saying, but there's a lot of players out there, and again, I don't term myself as a filthy casual. I have said before, I'm somewhat of an in-betweener in that I put a lot of time into the game. I wasn't a raider, but I was far from a casual. But I would like to have prospects of getting to Naxx. I want to put in the time and effort and get there. And if it's only designed to be for the best of the best of the best of the best of the best and the top 1%, then I'm not asking for it to be easy, but we don't need to ramp up the difficulty. Let's just keep it as it was. I'm fine with that. The next point, guys, is from a user called War Wolf Rider, who says the following. How would everyone feel if, say, after a year of Naxx being out, the team behind classic servers started putting out new dungeons and raids while keeping the level cap at 60? For example, all the content that was planned but either was never added or changed in later expansions. Unless I'm mistaken, RuneScape did something like this with their old school servers. That's an interesting point. I think it's a funny one to bring up, just in terms of, again, you raise this concept of new stuff, and that's going to make a lot of people sort of get a bit upset, me included. But this point, I know, as outrageous as it is, guys, really highlights around the following. Should Naxx be the end game? You're all screaming, stop, no changes, no changes. And this is a rather outrageous suggestion. I do acknowledge that, guys. I'm not with War Wolf Rider here. I'm not down with a year or two after Naxx being put out that they devise new dungeons and new raids that here's the new end game, here's the new goalpost that you're reaching for. I'm not looking forward to that. We want vanilla WoW. We want Naxx to be the end game. Naxx is this word that we go like, ooh, that's the last boss. Like, let's just keep it that way. If you want more, if you want new stuff, unfortunately, I do think you're not necessarily asking for vanilla WoW. You're asking for something else, and perhaps that something else is already available to you. There is the argument there's a lot of people that seem to be asking for a different WoW with a level cap of 60. Well, that's not vanilla WoW, and I am siding with that camp that does sort of politely point out to these people, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Go elsewhere, please, because if you want to come to Classic WoW, you have to understand what you're getting. The next post, guys, is from a user called LagSpike, who says, at least in the private servers I played on, Naxx was still a pretty exclusive club, even years into the server's lifetime. Who knows what this one will be like? So that raises the point that even on private servers, guys, people are still sort of struggling with Naxx. So I do like to think it would be the same on Classic WoW. The next post on the same topic is from Anatharia, who says, no, it should never be nerfed. You should be getting good, not expecting Blizzard to nerf it for you. And I do somewhat side with Anatharia. This get good culture that we live in terms of game and the aspect of game difficulty being ramped up in recent years with things like Dark Souls making it come back in vogue to have a game be really quite difficult again. And we're getting a lot of 2D platformers that have brought back to the 80s and 90s of games being kind of frustratingly difficult. I'm into it. I didn't think I would be, but I, like a lot of other people, fell online and went, oh yeah, games are supposed to be kind of a challenge. Like, I don't like things being spoon-fed to me. And I'm looking forward to getting better as a player. I'm going to die a lot. Not in Naxx, just trying to get to Naxx. God, I dream of even seeing Naxx, like in being in the same 100 meters of Naxx one day. But God, just LBRS, UBRS, Molten Core, Onyxia, all that stuff. And again, guys, I can't wait to do all this stuff again, but I'm going to die so many times. I'm a shitty player. I'm such an average player, but I love it. And that's part of the fun, is learning from your mistakes and learning strategies and going, oh, so I don't stand in front of the boss when he's got a cone spell, a cone-shaped spell. I understand now. Oh, aggro is bad and I shouldn't be blowing things up and drawing stuff away from the tank. I get it now. It's part of the learning process, guys, and I enjoy the fact that people are saying don't nerf things. We're not trying to lower the bar. If anything, let's just keep it where it is, and I'm fine with that. Now it's time for the next segment, guys. Anger management. Each week I come to you with some of the angriest posts that I've found on the forums in relation to the subject matter. Today's subject matter obviously being Naxxramas. So what were some of the gripes that people had on the forums in relation to how Naxxramas used to be? We start with a Reddit user named God of Gore, who says, the only super hard part of Naxx 40 and vanilla in general was coordinating 39 other people. He's quite right. That was probably the only super hard part, except that's bloody impossible. The next post I have, guys, is from the official forums. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the name of this person. I've cut that out. However, it goes as follows. There was also the issue with needing to be extremely geared. And on top of that, for Horsemen, the first major roadblock required 8 fucking fully geared tanks. If we had stats, I wouldn't be surprised to see that most guilds, well, most that were good enough to get to Naxx, got to 4 Horsemen but then had to stop because of the following. 1. Constant tank poaching. You needed 8 tanks. Most guilds don't have 8 tanks, and certainly not 8 geared tanks. 2. Other raiders giving up because of number 1. 3. You killed 4 horsemen. Now your extra tanks are useless again. Go get frost resist gear. I like that one. The next post comes from user Zamota on Reddit, who says, farming world buffs for an hour before raid only to have your healers ganked outside the instance. That was their Naxxramas experience. The next one, guys, comes from Artna C, again on Reddit. They say, to expand a little, take a fight like Lotheb. Pretty simple concept, but execution and preparation was insane. First, you had to gather all the consumables, every potion, world buffs, health stones, resist pots, for 40 people. Then you had to execute the fight across as many of the 40 people as possible. Get everyone to use the right potion at the right time to prevent them from dying, whilst also executing the damage rotations and healing and tanking that were hardly intuitive at the time. Screw up and wipe, gather everything again and repeat. The difficulty in vanilla raids was logistics more than anything. And I think they're quite right. And the final post comes from Alethea on the official forums, who says, I still have nightmares from tanking Naxx 40. A very small part of me gets nostalgic thinking about it, but I mostly want to vomit at the thought of it. Bleh. And now, guys, it's time for the next segment, Tidbits. Each week, guys, I want to bring you a few points of information about the subject matter, this week being Naxxramas, that you might not have otherwise known. Just little tidbits of information that I found sprawled throughout the internet that, hey, they might not be true, but, so the internet says. So here we go. Let's see if you knew any of these ones, guys. And if you knew any others that I could read out on the next podcast as a correction, then I'd love to hear your input. Number 1. Did you know that originally in Naxxramas, there was a door in the Arachnid Quarter which could be moused over to see the name Doodad _Nox door Spider02, and Blizzard never bothered to fix it. Next, did you know that in the updated version of Naxx, being what we got in Wrath of the Lich King, there is a sword named Slayer of the Lifeless, which can be looted from the boss Gothic the Harvester in the 10-man version of the raid. This is a homage to the Sword of a Thousand Truths, which was raised obviously in the now very famous South Park episode that took on World of Warcraft, where they had to, as the famous quote goes, guys, how do you kill that which has no life? And hence we got the Slayer of the Lifeless when Blizz got in on the joke. Very nice, Blizz. And next, guys, I've got this one. Do you know that the word Lotheb is an anagram for Healbot? And considering Lotheb's abilities, this is likely an intentional joke by the developers. The add-on Healbot wasn't something people used after they encountered Lotheb. It was used long before him by almost every healer. Not paladins, they just have to buff every 5 minutes. So that post says. And finally, guys, I've dug up an interview with former WoW director and now Overwatch director Jeff Kaplan on the release of patch 1.11. And Kaplan was asked, so, for the Tier 3 sets, is Naxxramas a token system, or are there straight-up drops? And I found this very interesting that Kaplan straight up acknowledged. He says the following: in Ankaraj and Zolgarub, we realized we made a bad mistake with itemization. Which I thought was an interesting little sort of mea culpa from Kaplan and Blizz in terms of they were ready to kind of fall on their own swords and say, look, sometimes we are fallible. And he obviously explains the token system and the refined token system that we got in Naxx. But I just thought it was interesting to know that Blizz does at times sort of officially say, hey, my bad, we fucked up. Our bad, we fucked up. So it's nice to find that little nugget on the internet. Anyway, the next segment, guys, is Top 5. Each week I come to you with a little bit of creative fun about a top 5 listing of my choosing in relation to the subject matter. So today I've got the top 5 reasons that Kel'Thuzad would have decided to set up shop in a flying citadel away from the rest of the world. So why did Kel'Thuzad do this? Number 5. He owes the wrong people a shit ton of money. Perhaps the Argent Dawn getting into loan sharking, who knows. Number 4. So he didn't have to get involved in all of these WoW Classic arguments. He's sitting up there going, screw you guys, you argue it out down there, I'll be up here when you're ready for me. Number 3, the rent in the Plague Lands is a bitch. Have you tried to raise a family and rent a house in that area? It is difficult. So he just up and took the Citadel up in the air, and guess what? Technicality, bitches. No rent to be paid. Number 2, he got someone pregnant. And he's like, fucking this, I'm out of here, not answering that text, you what? Bye. Absentee father syndrome? I think Kel'Thuzad would be one of those guys. Asshole. And guys, the number one reason that Kel'Thuzad decided to set up shop in a flying citadel away from the rest of the world was he took the movie Up a little literally. I think naturally Kel'Thuzad, I can picture Kel'Thuzad sitting in a cinema with his popcorn watching Up, naturally crying like a baby during that opening sequence. Well, it makes me cry, so I think it would make Kel'Thuzad cry. Anyway, guys, that's Top 5. That's the podcast. I really, really hope you've enjoyed this version of the podcast. Now, as I said, guys, get used to it because every week I'm going to be doing something like this. The first episode that will be released on a Sunday goes deep on news and forum postings. I come at you with reportings of what we are talking about on the forums, what's going on, bringing it back to you who's hungry for news on all things WoW and on discussion points on what people want in the new iteration of WoW Classic. The second episode, the one you've just heard, coming to you every Wednesday, just not this week, is going to be content and lore-based. I really, really hope you've enjoyed the refresher course that I gave you today on Naxxramas, guys. It's going to be a character or a location every week that just really seeks to remind people of what we're going to be going back to in WoW Classic. Things we can't wait to be a part of again. I can't wait to try Naxxramas, even though I've never seen it before. I can't wait to go back to the Dead Mines, which is going to be the subject of next week's episode. I can't wait to go back to a number of dungeons and see a number of characters again. And guys, we're going to be getting into all of it. And guys, hopefully you put up with a lot of my jokes through the episode. Hopefully some of them landed at least. And please, guys, get back to me with feedback. Let me know if you like what I'm doing. Let me know if you don't like what I'm doing. Let me know if you have suggestions for changes to the show. Let me know if you have something you want me to read out on an episode. And I will do it, guys. If you've got some great input, if you've got a funny comment on something that I've covered in this episode, let me know. I'll talk about it. Can't wait to have you along for the next episode next Sunday. Thanks very much. Bye.